Ben Cohen moved to Vermont in 1977 and co-founded an ice cream company that bears his name, Ben & Jerry's. They made great ice cream. They still do. Ben Cohen became famous for his liberal political activism. The ice cream was great. His political opinions were deeply offensive to most conservatives. Fast forward to 2022, and Ben Cohen was one of the only liberals in the United States to come out against the war in Ukraine. It seems like a good moment to pause and reconsider whether some of Ben Cohen's views on war are maybe not insane. Maybe they're worth hearing. Here's Ben Cohen. So that you brought a book by Smedley Darlington Butler, the most decorated Marine in World War I. He's a Marine general. He won 2 Medals of Honor. And he wrote a book called War is a Racket. And for some reason, it's not the most famous book ever written in English, but it probably should be. What is that, and why did you bring it?
Well, I've been kind of inspired by this quote of his. I think he encapsulates what's been going on in terms of how our military has been used, and he's been there, done that.
That's for sure.
And I think about it a lot in terms of all these refugees, immigrants that are trying to get to the U.S. and why are they trying to get to the U.S.? A lot of times it's because the U.S. at some point in history overthrew or invaded their government or, well, I'll tell you what Smedley says here. Can I quote?
Please.
So he says, I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service, and during that period, I spent most of my time as a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, and the bankers. Butler wrote in 1955. Then he goes on, in short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I helped make Mexico safe for American oil interests. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for national city bank boys to collect revenues. I helped in the raping of a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers in 1902 to 1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for the American sugar interests in 1916. I helped make Honduras right for the American fruit companies in 1903. In China in 1927, I helped set it up so that Standard Oil went on its way unmolested. Looking back on it, I feel I might have given Al Capone a few hints. The best he could do was to operate in 3 city districts. We Marines operated on 3 continents.
So this was a major general in the United States Marine Corps, the single most decorated Marine when he wrote that. And I think he's pretty much forgotten now.
Yeah.
And he was much maligned after he said that.
Yeah, very much. I mean,
so you think, I guess another way of saying, you think that our military heroes are the most revered people in our country? I mean, you can't criticize a man who's received 2 Medals of Honor, and yet he crossed the line and they hated him for that.
Yeah, but he told the truth.
So how is that relevant to right now?
I think that those actions that the U.S. has done over the years back in his time and pretty much continues to do to essentially run the world in a way that benefits the elites in the United States ends up causing a lot of resentment, ends up being the cause of a lot of wars, ends up being the cause of a lot of immigration and people trying to flee countries that are economically or politically unlivable. And if you go back to the root causes, you find out that there were, some great liberation struggles in these countries, and the U.S. was on the other side.
Yes. What's interesting is that General Butler wrote that, years after he left the Marine Corps. He was a hero in World War I when we were, working to stop the Kaiser. Many Americans killed to stop the Kaiser. No one even remembers what a Kaiser is. But that was a war. The First World War was a war for democracy and freedom. It didn't work, of course. But we're hearing the same slogans now with Ukraine. And as then, a lot of really decent, good-hearted people with the right motives are buying it completely. It's not just warmongers who are in favor of these wars. It's like your next-door neighbor who's a good person.
Yeah, I think that's really true. The way a lot of people see it is, this little country, Ukraine, got invaded by this big giant Russia. But I think what you need to understand is what provoked that war and how it could have been prevented. At the end of the Cold War, the U.S. Made promises to Russia that they're not going to expand NATO eastward. And then we proceeded to expand NATO eastward. As a matter of fact, the government was not going to do that until the weapons manufacturers set up this committee to expand NATO, which was essentially the CEOs of the weapons manufacturers lobbying Congress to expand NATO. So, if you're a weapons manufacturer and you expand NATO, they're going to buy a lot of your stuff.
Why would first let me ask, do you think it's a reasonable request by Russia not to have NATO expand to its borders?
Yeah, absolutely. In the same way that, the United States says that, there's our sphere of influence.
Yes.
I remember learning about this in, elementary school or middle school, that the Monroe Doctrine.
Yes.
That it's our divine right from God.
To control our hemisphere.
To control our hemisphere. And it sounded crazy to me then. And, I can see making sure that there's not enemies right on your borders. But in terms of controlling the whole hemisphere, I don't buy it. And the U.S. has now expanded its sphere of influence to include the entire world. It's amazing. We have military commands that cover every portion of the globe. And we have 800 military bases around the world. When I was growing up, I heard we had a bunch of overseas bases. I figured, that's cool. Every country must have overseas bases. And then, I find out that the country who has the next most overseas bases has like 5. It's the U.S. that is using its military power to control the world. And the fact of the matter is that the United States is 5% of the world population. So having 5% dominate the world militarily, that doesn't sound democratic to me.
No. And it doesn't sound like it helps the United States very much.
No, I think it's incredibly harmful to the United States. First of all, we're making a lot of enemies. People don't like us being the big bully on the hill, telling all these other countries what to do. And it sucks a huge amount of money out of our country. It's stuff that can be used for things that people really want and need. You could we could have